The night the lighthouse went dark on a stormy night in the quiet coastal town of Blackridge. The lighthouse suddenly went dark. For over 80 years, it had never failed. Ships depended on it. Fishermen trusted it. The town felt safe because of it. But at 11:47 p.m., the light went out, and by morning, the lighthouse keeper was gone. What investigators discovered inside would unravel a secret buried for decades. Chapter 1. The Last Signal. Blackridge was the kind of town where nothing ever happened. Perched along a rugged coastline, it was known for two things: its violent storms and its lighthouse. The lighthouse keeper, Thomas Grady, had held the position for nearly 25 years. He was a quiet widower in his late 60s, respected by everyone. He lived alone in the tall white tower overlooking the sea. On October 14th, a brutal storm rolled in from the Atlantic. Winds hit 70 miles per hour. Waves crashed against the cliffs like cannon fire. At 10:30 p.m., Thomas made his routine radio check with the harbor master. "Light is strong and steady," he said calmly. That was the last anyone heard from him. At 11:47 p.m., the beam disappeared. Police Scarlight Chapter 2. A disturbing discovery. By sunrise, the Coast Guard had received 3 distress calls from cargo vessels that had nearly struck the rocks. Deputy Sheriff Clara Hayes was the first to reach the lighthouse after the storm cleared. The front door was slightly open. Inside, furniture was overturned. A lantern lay shattered on the floor. The radio was smashed, but there was no sign of Thomas. No blood, no body, just one strange detail. The massive light bulb at the top of the tower had not burned out. It had been deliberately unscrewed. Magnifying glass tilted left. Chapter 3. The Hidden Ledger. Investigators initially assumed robbery or perhaps an accident during the storm. But Thomas had little money and no enemies. Then Clara found something unusual. Behind a loose brick in the wall was a small leather-bound ledger. Inside were handwritten notes spanning nearly 30 years. But these weren't routine lighthouse logs. They were coordinates, dates, ship names, and strange coded symbols. One repeated phrase caught Clara's attention. "Midnight transfer complete." Anchor Chapter 4. The Smuggling Route. When federal agents became involved, they made a chilling discovery. For decades, Blackridge's lighthouse had been used as a navigation signal. Not just for ships avoiding rocks, but for ships avoiding the law. Every time the lighthouse blinked twice rapidly before midnight, it signaled a safe passage for smugglers transporting illegal goods along the coast. Drugs, weapons, even human trafficking victims. Thomas Grady, the beloved lighthouse keeper, may have been orchestrating it all. But why? And where was he now? Puzzle Piece Chapter 5. The Secret Beneath the Tower. Clara refused to believe Thomas was a criminal mastermind. Something didn't fit. The ledger looked organized, but the last few entries were frantic and messy, like someone was under pressure. Then came the breakthrough. A maintenance worker mentioned that Thomas had recently requested repairs in the lighthouse basement, despite there being no official basement on record. Investigators searched the foundation carefully. Behind a steel panel, they found a concealed staircase. It led to a hidden underground room. Inside were old crates stamped with foreign shipping labels, and a locked steel cabinet. When agents forced it open, they found passports. Dozens of them, all fake. But one was real, Thomas Grady's, with a different name. Detective Chapter 6. The Real Thomas Grady. Fingerprints told the real story. The man known as Thomas Grady was not who he claimed to be. His real name was Victor Markovich, a former dock worker from overseas who had disappeared 30 years ago during a major smuggling investigation. He had assumed a new identity after the original Thomas Grady died in a boating accident, an accident that was ruled accidental at the time. But now, authorities weren't so sure. Victor had taken over the lighthouse job shortly after. The perfect cover, high vantage point, isolation, control over signals. For decades, he ran one of the most discreet smuggling operations on the East Coast. But something had changed recently. Cloud with Lightning, Chapter 7, Betrayal in the Storm. Phone records showed that Victor had received repeated calls in the weeks before his disappearance. From a burner phone linked to a known trafficking ring. Investigators believe Victor wanted out. He had grown older, paranoid, afraid. The final ledger entries suggested missed transfers and arguments. On the night of the storm, authorities now believe a final deal was scheduled. But Victor didn't cooperate. The smashed radio, the overturned furniture. It wasn't a random struggle. It was a warning. And Victor had turned off the lighthouse intentionally. Perhaps to stop the ship. Perhaps to signal distress. Water Wave, Chapter 8, The Wreckage. 3 days after the storm, debris washed ashore 12 miles south. Among it was a torn piece of waterproof fabric. Inside the lining, investigators found a GPS tracker. It belonged to a small cargo vessel that had vanished during the storm. Sonar scans later revealed a sunken boat resting on the ocean floor. No survivors were ever found, but divers discovered something chilling inside the wreck. A locked crate identical to those found in the lighthouse basement. The smuggling ring had attempted the transfer despite the storm, and something went terribly wrong. Candle Chapter 9, The Final Truth. Authorities concluded that Victor Markovich had been killed that night, either thrown into the sea or taken aboard the vessel that later sank. No body was ever recovered, but Deputy Clara Hayes couldn't shake one thought. What if Victor hadn't turned off the lighthouse to sabotage the deal? What if he turned it off to save lives? Without the guiding beam, the smugglers may have misjudged their approach, crashing into hidden rocks, ending the operation forever. The smuggling ring collapsed within months. Arrests were made across 3 states, and Blackridge slowly returned to peace. Sunrise Epilogue. The lighthouse stands today, restored and automated. Tourists visit it during the summer. They take photos. They admire the view. Few know the secret buried beneath the foundation. And fewer still know that the man they trusted for decades lived a double life. Criminal, imposter, or perhaps, in the end, a reluctant hero. Because sometimes the darkest night hides the deepest truth. And sometimes, when the light goes out, it's not an accident. It's a choice.